Have you ever had to say goodbye to your loved ones and not know if you will ever see them again? Well, on the evening of the 7th of October 2011, that's exactly what I had to do, because on the 8th of October I became the 11th person to have a bowel transplant here at Oxford. No one here could possibly know what that feeling is like, or what those final few steps of the walk to theatre are like. But actually, that isn't true. The only other people who can know what that gut-wrenching, absolutely petrifying feeling is like are other patients. Nothing a surgeon or a doctor can say can prepare you for that moment. The only people who can are fellow patients. And that is why the role of the patient and patient-to-patient interaction is absolutely vital in healthcare. Thank you for coming along to listen to me today. During my experience, I've been exceptionally scared, exceptionally grateful, and now exceptionally sure that patient engagement is fundamental to the provision of healthcare and fundamental in ensuring that patients are at the heart of decision making. I'd like to share with you a bit about my journey, what I've learnt and what I am learning, and I'll focus on two key points: how patients are going about making decisions and how patients are using digital technologies to engage with each other to make those decisions. Before you ask whether it's right that the key decision of undergoing an intestinal transplant falls to the patient, let me explain to you how I go about making my decisions in healthcare. What does my patient toolbox look like? I'm extremely proud and extremely humbled to stand here before you, seeing my surgeon Anil and Marion O'Connor, who've really changed my life. But my decision-making process entails all these aspects. But I have a confession to make. I knew nothing about digital technology and bowel transplants until 6 months before I had my surgery. Taking my transplant as first, I turned to actually the busiest doctor in the world for advice: Google. I'm not alone from getting advice from Google. How many of you here today have actually turned to Google for some advice or to check something up? Did you know health is the second most searched term on the internet? Twitter states that health tweets are up 51%, and Twitter says it is now capable of predicting health trends. 2 weeks after the social networking site Facebook added a way for its users to tell people about their organ donor status, the rate of organ donors was climbing at twice as fast as it ever did before. All of this sounds familiar to you. Well, people are learning and making decisions about their healthcare online, and I'm no different. As the British Medical Journal recently stated, let the patient revolution begin. I've got news for them. The train's already left the station. It began ages ago. From Google, my own journey took me to University College Hospital, to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and ended up at Oxford. To be honest, I walked in not expecting to have my transplant there. I was going to be number 11, and not all of the first 10 made it. But one man said 5 words that to this day I will never forget: I can change your life. Anil Vaidya, the man who became my doctor, said those words and then turned over this scrumpled up piece of paper and drew a very basic drawing of what he was going to do. He spoke my language. My wife Justine and I went away certain that Oxford was the right place. However, I needed to know more. There are 2 adult centres in the UK doing bowel transplants. Why should I go to Oxford? Yes, it was my decision from the word go, no one else's. And so I turned to patients and started my blog. My blog was a way initially of explaining to people what was going to happen without them bombarding my wife and family with questions that they couldn't answer. I decided from the word go to be open and honest about everything that was happening. I used the same openness to talk to people and patients about their experiences in the other UK centre. I wanted to hear about their thoughts, their experiences, their fears. What I discovered from other patients actually surprised me. Whilst the criteria was the same, the interpretation of that criteria by the medical team was different. Anil and his team seemed to take patients at an earlier stage, when they were healthier and had a better chance of recovery. From talking to patients, my experience was that the other centre took patients later down the road, when as a patient you perhaps were slightly weaker and recovery might have been tougher. So let me ask you this question. As a patient, whose right is it to decide whether you are ill enough to undergo life-threatening and life-changing surgery? Who determines whether your life is good or not? The answer is simple: the patient. For me, I had already had 20 operations, intestinal failure, a liver showing signs of going off, and I was on TPN for 18 hours a day. For some, that might be classed as life. For me, that was a life with no quality. So transplant wasn't one option, it was the only option. As a patient, I wanted those odds stacked in my favour. So you have two centres following the same criteria but with completely different outlooks. Well, as a patient, where would you want to go? Patients are communicating with each other in a way that has never been seen before. The way healthcare is going to be delivered has to change, and patients are leading the way. So how are we making these decisions? How and where are conversations happening? How can people get informed to make decisions that we are talking about here today? How do I talk to other patients? Well, it's quite simple. I communicate with them on a daily basis. Forget porn. Health is the most talked about topic on the internet. Let's take a look at the way patients and peoples are using digital technology to engage with each other, to inform and share and make decisions. And here are 7 things I'd like to show you. I started talking about my blog, and I started writing it 6 months before transplant. 15 months later, it has 60,000 readers. Quite why they want to listen to me, I have absolutely no idea, but they do. Social media and mobile technology is where we talk. From social media, I went onto this site called Pinterest. Some of you may know about it. It's where you can share photographs, images. I shared this. Beautiful, isn't it? It was my stoma. It became the most shared, or repinned in their term, picture globally the month it was posted. Some people gave me comments like, "What the hell are you doing and what is it?" But I had over 100 patients come back to me and go, "Thank you for sharing your experiences. I didn't ever want to tell anybody I had a stoma." From Pinterest, we started a Twitter campaign. On World IBD Day in 2012, we had 2 million people retweeted awareness about Crohn's and colitis. From there, we created a Pinterest board. We created a Facebook group for patients to share communication. In 6 hours, that Facebook group reached 830 patient members. That led to Skype and video interaction. I now have the privilege to talk to patients going through intestinal failure or bowel transplants around the world every single day by video. Are you doing that? It started with texting other patients. And then I started to be able to text my doctor. Monday morning texts. And this is how I communicate with Anil and the medical team here. I wonder how many of you are using basic technology to communicate with patients to make decisions. All bloods are perfect except for phosphate. We need to do another round, another infusion. We'll need you a day for a 6-hour infusion. Then we get the Monday morning text. "Good morning, how are things? Need to check your phosphate levels." All this allows me to interact, make decisions about my healthcare, and participate in my healthcare in an instant. Marion doesn't escape either. Joint pains, joint problems. By the way, Marion, you haven't fixed it yet. I've still got joint pains and joint problems. But in the space of 10, 15 minutes, I've got some answers. They know what's going on, and when I come into clinic, action plan is already sorted. So, what are the benefits? What are the benefits of all this patient engagement and interactivity, and does it really matter? Well, I communicate with 12,000 patients online. All of that is a massive untapped resource. All of that is anecdotal data that we talk about, sharing our problems, our issues, our communications, making decisions before we've even talked to you. Are you participating in those conversations? From my blog, I was privileged enough to be in a newspaper. Well, my kids thought it was cool. I thought I looked stupid. But anyway, from my blog and transplant, I perhaps have been able to have the greatest privilege any patient could ever have. Because as a result of that blog, patients that didn't even know about a bowel transplant have now had them. You guys change lives every day. For a patient to be able to have that impact is the most wonderful gift you can give another patient. I received an email. This was one of those patients. You can read this for yourself. It's very simple. This is exactly what he sent to me. He was told he had no chance. He wanted me to ask to talk to my surgeon. I'm really at my wit's end. 4 months later, he did come to Oxford and starred in his own newspaper article after a successful transplant. Patients talk, make decisions about things that doctors can't discuss. The impact on family life, financial burden, side effect of meds. We go on Facebook. Here's an exact example of a patient that I've been talking to who's gone through intestinal transplant in the States. I've removed her name, but some of you will probably know who she is. She was scared. She started off being excited, but as another bowel transplant patient, I knew exactly what she was going through. I knew her issues. I knew what she was worried about. Like me, she knows Crohn's. She knew her body. I'd had Crohn's for 30 years. Transplant is like nothing else. So we talked. We ended up going onto Skype. We talked about everything. She read my blog about the experiences. And finally, she had the transplant successfully. And we continued to communicate and talk about what's going wrong and the issues. So we can see the benefits for patients. Naturally, the questions are, what are the benefits for healthcare professionals in using social media? Well, the Mayo Clinic recently came out. The biggest risk in healthcare social media is not participating in the conversation. The NHS recently said the next generation of NHS staff will never have known a world without the internet or mobile phones. So how the NHS embraces their use of social media for the benefits of staff and patients will be crucial in creating a sustainable NHS. We trust our staff with patients' lives. Why don't we trust them with social media? It then goes on to produce this document, an uneasy consensus between patients and the NHS. We're in a time of change, and healthcare, perhaps more than any other field, is at the cutting edge of it. But this raises many questions. What is the role of the patient, and who makes the critical decisions? Patients or doctors? The role is simple. Patients are at the centre, not just a box that is ticked on a form, but patients must have a seat at the table where decisions are made. The NHS quotes, "Nothing about me without me." Who makes decisions? Actually, it should be about collaboration and co-production, but weighted slightly towards the patient. Patients, through this collaboration, can even become entrepreneurs if they want. They can try and come up with things. You all have given patients, or a lot of you here will have given patients ostomies as part of surgery. I was given an ileostomy. Do you know what it's actually like to wake up seeing part of your bowel on the outside of your belly? Then have to worry about the bag filling, measuring volumes, waking up every night covered in what you call output and we call shit. Well, I do. So I look for a solution to help. Aside from a drain and bucket, there wasn't anything else. And so from my hospital bed, post-transplant, this sensor was born. Something that just clips on the outside of a bag. Allows the Bluetooth to your mobile, allowing patients to set alarms for as and when they want to be alerted when the bag fills. The device that collates data on output and times of volumes and sends that data to your doctor. No more nasty surprises, no more buckets. And then the hospital version that allows 20 patients to be connected to one device at the nurse's station. You see, patients, if they're allowed to make decisions, can be co-producers and play a role in healthcare. So, my challenge to you is very simple. Patients are educating themselves through social media and digital technology. So give patients the options, all of them. The hospitals they go to, the timings of the surgery. Treat patients as partners and you'll get the same in return. I firmly believe that it is incumbent on patients, like myself, long-term with chronic conditions, to be active participants in their healthcare. It is not one-way traffic. Let's do this together. Patients, especially those undergoing bowel transplants, will continue to have to say those unbelievably hard goodbyes to loved ones before surgeries. Help them have a little more peace of mind, knowing that they really were part of the decision-making process. Thank you.